of Christians who believe and interpret the Bible, and especially Genesis chapter 1, the day in Genesis chapter 1, first day, second day, third day, are not simple 24 hours day. Rather, they are ages, they are long period of time, which can have thousands of years, millions of years perhaps. So that is the argument. And so we try to bring 5 reasons why that cannot be sustained according to the Bible. If the word day is used as singular, and if it is not, if that is not part of a grammatical compound structure, then it has to be simple day. That's what we looked at, and we looked at other 4 reasons as well. Now the objections are to be addressed. This we are looking at from Psalm 90 verse 4, where sometimes people try to say that this verse talks about maybe years. For example, this is what the verse read. Right. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passes by, or as a watch in the night. Okay, so that is the verse. So 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday. So for God, one day, for God's one day is like 1,000 years for us. So let's look at the explanation. Psalm 90 verse 4 is another passage that often being used to suggest that day may refer to an extended period of time. And especially this argument has some more positive, because the argument is that Moses is the author of the psalm. Who wrote Genesis? Moses wrote Genesis. Since Moses is the author of Genesis and author of Psalm 90, then so the argument is that the only psalm ascribed to him, the argument indicates that God's days are not our days. That's the argument. God's days are not our days. That is, God's days are not 24-hour days, but long period of time. That's what the law says. So God's days are not our days. God's days are not 24-hour days. Can this type of argument sustain from Psalm 94? Okay, in comparing the use of day in this verse and its usage, there are 3 observations will be helpful. 3 observations. Number 1, Psalm 90 verse 4, comparison between 1,000 years and yesterday involves a simile. What is a simile? Simile is like, is used to compare, like for instance, like or as. That's a word, right? Usually used to compare one thing from other. So in Hebrew, the word ke is used. Ke means like or as. However, Genesis 1, God describes his actual activities on each creation day. He is not making comparative statements, as in the case of Psalm 94 or 90 verse 4. Similarly, in verse 4 compares 1,000 years to brief period of time, right? 2 brief period of time, like 1,000 years is like yesterday when it passes by. Second, 1,000 years like a watch in the night. Okay, 1,000 years like yesterday. 1,000 years like a watch in the night. This is to say, the author is not using 1,000 years in comparison with a literal day, but with a short period of time. So the point of this verse is that God does not evaluate time the way man does. That is what author wants to say. The way that God looks at time is not the way that man looks at, right? Because God is above the time. We are within the time. We are always measured by time, but God is not. We already saw that in systematic theology when we learned about eternality or eternity of God. Second observation, though day, that is Yom, is used in Genesis 1 and Psalm 4, Yom is consistently used in Genesis as a singular noun. Singular, a day, first day. However, in Psalm 94, Yom is a part of compound grammatical structure. Again, remember that a first argument, a compound grammatical structure. Literally, like a day already passed. That is the literal translation. Like yesterday, kayom et more. Hebrew word, kayom et more. As such, this comparison is grammatically deficient. So here, as we said, this is part of a compound grammatical structure. So if it is part of a compound grammatical structure, it does not make it necessary to be a simple singular day. One more observation. Psalm 90 is not a creation hymn. It doesn't talk about creation. The stanza in which verse 4 is located does not focus on any items from creation. Therefore, if any attention is given to the exegetical detail, Psalm 94 cannot be used to support figurative interpretation of the days of Genesis 1. So, by looking at the rules that we have already learned, there is no need to tell that Psalm 90 verse 4 is a reference to literal day. It is not. And it is simply comparing that the way that God looks at time and the way that we look at time is completely different, right? Actually, the psalmist Moses is talking about the brevity of life, right? Our life is not so long. We don't have much length. That's what he actually says there. Now, 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8. This is the second passage, right? Second passage that has a problem or people raise, right? Let's look at this verse. Can one of you please read it for me? Can one of you please read 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8?
Okay. But beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day.
Okay, all right, don't forget, with God, with the Lord, 1 day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a 1 day. Now, another text used to equate day with 1,000 years is 2 Peter 3:8. By equating creation day with 1,000 years, this text reputedly supports a figurative interpretation of the days of creation week. Okay, that is the argument. It has been suggested that if you take this passage at face value along with Psalm 90 verse 4, it explicitly rules out literal interpretation of the days of Genesis 1, right? That's what the argument. In contrast to this type of interpretation, we should notice that the immediate context of 2 Peter 3 verse 8 is not a creation context. It's not creation. Furthermore, as in Psalm, you see what? A simile is used to make comparison. Remember, what do you read? It doesn't say, so for example, here's the verse, with the Lord, 1 day is like 1,000. It doesn't say 1 day is 1,000 years. Does it say? It doesn't say. It simply says 1 day is like, right? Like. So it is much similar to what we already have learned from Psalm. Now, Whitcomb, one of the good authors, right? If you have his books, something trustworthy and is good in a good scholar, especially on biblical creationism. Now, he says, later verse, for example, does not say that God's days last 1,000 years. Don't think that God's day lasts 1,000 years, but that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. That's what actually it means. In other words, God is above the limitations of time in sense that he can accomplish in one literal day what nature or man could accomplish in a vast period of time, if ever. So God can do what we do for 1,000 years, God can do within a day. Not that day is as 1,000 years, it is not is 1,000 years. If one day in this verse means long period of time, then we would end up with the following absurdity, right? If it is a long period of time, a day is a long period of time. Now, how you actually explain? A long period of time is with the Lord as 1,000 years. Instead, this verse reveals how much God can actually accomplish in a literal day of 24 hours. So, by looking at the arguments that a day is like 1,000 years is a way to support the idea that in Genesis chapter 1, a day is it is 1,000 years. Doesn't hold water, because that's not what the Bible actually says. Okay. Now there is one more challenge, that is on the sixth day. All right, the third objection and the fourth objection. Fourth objection, final challenge to literal interpretation of the creation days pertains to many activities that took place on sixth day. Right? The challenge is that, see, on the sixth day, there were many activities took place. It cannot be completed in one day. That's the argument. All right? Many activities took place which cannot be completed one day. All right. So according to this line of reasoning, sixth day includes more activities that Adam could humanly accomplish. Grudem summarizes this line of reasoning, the extended summary. So I'm not going to read the extended summary, because basically he's talking about naming, how can Adam name all these animals within a day, right? So let's look at the answer. Against this type of reasoning, we should ask God, first of all right, that's the first question, is God capable of doing all these activities in one day or a portion thereof? Is God capable of doing what we see on sixth day within a day? My answer would be absolutely yes. God is capable, right? Of the many activities represented by old earth advocates, is not God the one performing most of them? Yeah. However, the activity might superficially appear to involve for Adam to accomplish in a portion of a literal day, that is especially assigning names to animals. It's not easy, so you must have taken cannot be completed within one day. However, Adam's giving names to animals is not quite the mammoth task that old earth advocates would lead us to believe. There are three reasons for maintaining that Adam was capable of doing this in a portion of a literal day. Right? Three reasons. And we are going to say why Adam was able to do this very easily. Genesis chapter 2, verse 19 to 20. Especially informs that, first of all, God brought the animals to Adam so that he could assign them names. What is that? God brought animals. See, Adam did not have to go and search animals to name them. Right? Adam did not have to. God brought them. Right? This is what we read. Out of the ground, the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the sky and brought them to man to see what he would call them. Whatever the man called a living creature, that was its name. Right? So the man gave names to all the cattle and all the birds of the sky and to the every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper suitable for him. So what's the point? Our point is, number one, Adam did not have to go and search the animals to name. God brought them, right? If Adam had to round up the animals, this would have certainly increased the difficulty. But that's not the thing. Animals came to Adam. God brought them. Second. Okay. Second, Genesis chapter 2, verse 19 to 20. Also inform us that Adam named only all the cattle, beasts of the field, and birds of the air. You see? That means Adam did not name everything. To say that it was an incredibly large number of animals appears somewhat exaggerated. In considering the text of Genesis 1 and 2, Adam did not assign names to those creatures that move along the ground, which already said. Adam did not name, right, the creatures that move along the ground. Adam did not name the sea creatures. Did not. Adam gave names only to those animals with which he would have primary contact as he exercised his rule over them. Only those kinds of animals Adam named. Maybe now probably this is the first time you are thinking that way or hearing that way, but that's the fact. That's a fact, right? Adam did not name every animal. Don't think that. All right, these, especially the animals that he is going to have primary contacts. This now, at the most, this would include only birds and the higher mammals. Furthermore, the created kinds undoubtedly represented broader categories than our modern species or genera, quite possibly approximating, in the most cases, the taxonomic family. Okay, so how many kinds were actually there to be named in the beginning? Maybe a little unknown. I will just explain a little more. That is, think this way. Just as God created the prototypes for the vegetation and for mankind, he also did the same in animal kingdom. Same in the animal kingdom, right? Now think with me here. The DNA structure for Adam and Eve was undoubtedly designed to allow for the subsequent descendants, according to the Bible. Right? So what do we have to understand? See, in the beginning, there was only two people, right? Adam and Eve. Only two people. And now you see how many varieties of people in the world? How many varieties? All right? You say black, white, middle, brown, rose, whatever the color you wanted to call. Now, when you study Adam's DNA structure was, and Eve's DNA structure was in a way that all kinds of people can come out of Adam, right? Adam had the DNA structure. As Adam and Eve were the prototypes for humanity. They were the prototypes, only two. Similarly, there would have been male and female proto-dog, right? You don't now just think about now how many types of dogs now, right? In the world, many kinds of dogs, types of dog. But in the beginning, there were only two, right? And there would have been also a male and female proto-horse when God created. Thus, Adam's task, as described in Genesis 2, 19 to 20, is not nearly as large as many advocates of on of old earth would suggest. This is to say that it would not require many days or years to do this. Adam's naming the prototypes of only a portion of various created kinds. All the cattle, all the beasts of the field, and all the birds of the field. It is very few in number that Adam had to name. Because God did not, in the beginning, God did not create all kinds, all types of horses. No, there was only one type. Not all kinds of elephants. Only one type, one male and one female. Not all types of dinosaurs. Only one type, one male and one female. So it doesn't require much time for Adam to name. Okay, third observation, why it doesn't require much time. Third observation. We should also keep in mind that Adam was created perfectly programmed, at least as far as human race is concerned. Do you know who was the wisest intellectual man ever lived in this world? The wisest man? This was Adam. Adam and Eve. They were the wisest people. Why? Why they were wisest? Why they were, the people with the lot of wisdom? Why they were the people with the lot of intellect? Why? Why? It is simply because they were not sinful. There is no sin, right? Only Adam and Eve had some period of time without a sin. Perfect people, if you can say, which means what? And these days, all the intellectuals, wise people that we are talking about are not really wise when we compare to Adam. Right? So, from an unfallen human state, Adam's mind would have been programmed from the beginning to exercise his subordinate sovereign rights over the animal kingdom, including the ability to name each kind. Even if Adam named 1,000 animals at the maximum, this would seem like a large task to us. However, the task must be balanced by the biblical fact that God directly and perfectly created Adam. As the perfection of humanity, he came to equipped to function as God's wise regent in exercising dominion on earth. All right. So what we need to understand when people talk about that, on sixth day, there was a lot of activity which cannot be fulfilled by one day, also doesn't hold water, because as far as Adam is concerned, it was very easy for him to name them, because there were not too many animals like what you see on the earth now, right? Not too many. All right. So now let's come to the conclusion here. Our discussion of these four arguments used to disprove that days of creation were normal days has demonstrated that they do not provide any valid contribution to our understanding of the length of days in Genesis 1. To use these four difficulties to support figurative understanding of days of creation is certainly a tedious exercise. The use of these difficulties as a justification to reinterpret the normative text on creation reflects an inconsistency in one's view of the perspicuity and sufficiency of Scripture and a deficient worldview. All right, so we looked at those four arguments okay. So we answered all the four objections. Now let's look at the four observation as a conclusion for this chapter. All right. Now, as we look at God's creation, four observation has to be there in our mind. You learn Genesis 1, four things. Has to be. Number one, supernatural nature of God's creative activities, right? God's creation was supernatural. What is that? God created the world in Genesis in a way that is entirely distinct from what takes place today. What you see today is completely different when God created. Today, nothing is created directly by God. Nothing. Okay? Everything is brought into existence from previously existing material. So when we say creating something, right? Create. The word create means bring into existence out of nothing something, right? But now what happens? Anything that you do, anything that you make is from existing material. You don't make anything out of nothing, right? That's only Sai Baba can do, right? You heard about Sai Baba? Sai Baba was famous for bringing ashes from the air, if you really know. But later people found out how he makes it. So only Sai Baba, I'm just saying, only Sai Baba can do, make something out of nothing. Not like there's not a human being can do it, right? So that is what we understand. So creation means out of nothing, you bring something into existence. Now that doesn't happen. Now what happens? You do everything out of previously existing materials. So in science, the basic truth is referred to as the first law of thermodynamics. All right? First law of thermodynamics. If you study maybe in the school, right? They know this law, first law of thermodynamics. What is that? It is first law of thermodynamics is also referred to as law of energy conservation. Energy conservation. That is, this law states that energy can be changed from one form to another, but it can neither be created nor destroyed. You see, right? Energy can be changed from one form to another, right? One form of energy can be created to another form, but it can neither be created or nor destroyed. For example, this is cold season now, in Delhi and most of the northern part. And what people do, people maybe here on the roadside, they burn firewoods, right? Burning firewood. So you make energy, right? That's right. But we know that nobody makes heat out of nowhere. It comes somewhere, and it goes to somewhere, right? It was in a different form, and it ends up in a different form. It doesn't go anywhere, right? That is the rule. The Lord demonstrates that the impossibility of the created order creating itself. Creation cannot create anything. Creation cannot create anything. What is that? Within the natural realm, there is absolutely nothing that is responsible for its own origination. You are not responsible for your origination. Human beings are not responsible for their origination. Similarly, animals are not responsible for their beginning. No one is responsible because there is someone is there, right? So natural order, there is absolutely nothing that is responsible for its own origination. This is in sharp contrast to all naturalistic thought in evolution, right? So, what we have to understand, the structure of our present universe is not one of innovation, but conservation. So, what God did is God is the one who made matter and energy out of nothing. God is the one who made matter and energy out of nothing. Only God was able to do that. That is what we call creation, right? But we don't do anything out of nothing. We always need something, right? As Bible reflects, Genesis 2, verse 1 to 3, God's supernatural work of creation week is not reoccurring. What now happens? In his providence, God presently works through natural means and is directing the universe to its glorious end. Right? God directs the universe to glorious ends. Now, God doesn't create anything. God directs the universe. God preserves, right? God's work in preservation keeps the universe together. This is why energy is neither being destroyed nor freshly created. No energy newly created, no energy that can be destroyed. Somewhere it has to end up in a different form. Thus, when created, the heavens and the sea and all that is in them is, he did so without the use of any pre-existent materials whatsoever. In one moment, right? In one moment, there was no physical substance anywhere. No physical substance. In the next moment, heavens and the earth sprang into existence. Think about that one. There was no heaven, no earth, no matter, no energy, no matter. But another moment, everything came. So theologians call this as ex nihilo, right? Ex nihilo. What is that? Please learn this term. Ex nihilo. Ex nihilo means creation out of nothing. Please learn, because you're going to see this term in many, many books. Creatio ex nihilo. Creation out of nothing. Right? When God created. This expression is helpful if you understand it to mean that physical entities were created out of non-physical resources of God's omnipotence. Technically, the expression is applicable only to the creation of inorganic material informing the bodies of living things. Though every created thing in the creation week was not created out of nothing, but everything was created supernaturally. So what God did, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, we see there was a moment when there was nothing, right? And when God created, this next moment, you have the heavens and the earth. Then, so you have already, now God created material, God created energy, and now what God does, God makes everything out of what has been created, right? God makes maybe, all the animals, vegetations, and all the things that have been made there, the stars, sun, moon, or everything that is there, it's all out of existing materials that God created. All right. So in the beginning, when Bible says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that was out of nothing. That is what creation. Then what God does, with what God has created out of nothing. From them, God rearranged everything, right? So the point is, though every created thing in the creation week was not created out of nothing, everything was created supernaturally. Why? We say everything was not created out of nothing because all other things came from something. But even that coming was supernatural.
Pastor, is there any substantive support from for this argument that subsequent things are created from something?
No. I'm saying God. No, I'm not saying God is. I'm saying exactly that is what Genesis chapter 1 explains. If you look at in this creative week, the original when we studied, there are three things that God created, right? Number one, space, matter, energy. Right? These three things that you see, what Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. These three things comes out of nothing. Right? Comes out of nothing. Because these three things were not in existence at one point of time. Right? Then what you see, if you read Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, that heavens and the earth is God is decorating, arranging in a way that at the end, human can populate, his image bearers can populate. That is what you read. Okay, so for example, think about vegetation, right? Vegetation comes from the earth, right? Comes from the earth, and think about the animals. And if you look at all these things of course, these are all supernatural work. These are all miraculous work. These are all not natural work at all. Supernatural work, but what we have to understand is that we have heavens and the earth, right? This is what we read. Let me show you one more time. That when God created heavens, sea, and all that is therein, he did so without use of any pre-existent materials whatsoever, right? So the idea is, in one moment, there was no physical substance anywhere, no physical substance at all. In the next moments, you have the heavens and the earth sprang into existence.
That is very clear. Yeah. That aspect is very clear. Like he made man from the dust of the earth. So he used to make man from something. Whereas vegetation and the animals, were they not spoken into existence?
Yes, they were spoken into existence means, yes, when God says, they came into being.
But man was not spoken into existence. Man was physically
made. The reason why is simply, God could have done it. God could have done it. The reason why is that God wants us to show that man is the crown of creation. Right? Because the reason why God has made the heavens and the earth is so that his image bearers can populate and rule for God. So that's the only reason it is said out of the dust from the ground. So just see, let's think a minute now. What happens when vegetation dies? What happens? What happens when vegetable, like you have all the grass, it dies.
it becomes manure.
Decay.
Decays.
Parts of the soil, right?
Decays.
Decays, right? What happens when we die?
We decay.
Same process, right?
Same process.
Same process. What happens when an animal dies?
Same process.
Same process. So you won't read that animals were created from the ground. You won't read, but there's vegetation actually came from the ground. You don't read that one, right? What you read is or what God wants to tell us. Nothing came up naturally. There was no automatic growth of vegetation. Nothing. God created, God made from what is there. God commanded all the particles to come together so that there will be vegetation within a second. Right? Similarly, God commanded the animals to be there. So I am saying everything that you have is what you see is created by God, and it is created out of something. Created out of something. Everything is created out of something. And therefore, it has that natural process. The reason why we read about human being is that human beings are special creature for God because they are the image bearers, and therefore they are specially, their creation is specially explained. Right now, let's look at maybe some more clarifications here. So our point is this: yes, God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing, but then the rest of the creative activity does not necessarily to be everything out of coming out of nothing. But God is using pre-existing material to create, right?
Yes.
But one thing is sure, everything was supernaturally created. Since creation was directly and immediately created by God, with no human being present for 6 days, this means we can only understand what happened through God giving us special revelation about the subject. No human beings ever present when God created animals, vegetation, stars, right? No. So all the information what we have is what has been given in God's word. Even if we had been present, we would not have comprehended what God was doing unless God provided man his own interpretation of things. So in effect, God confronted Job about this very issue. God confronted. What God says in Job chapter 38, when he said to Job, because you are like a man, yourself like a man, I will question you. You shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Where were you? Right? Tell me if you understand. So the idea is that there was no human being at that time. Right? Now, our difficulty in comprehending God's supernatural creation is partially as a result of our finiteness, but more profoundly as a result of our depravity. Natural man is blind to spiritual things, and he has to believe a lie. The doctrine of creation is especially foolish to modern man. However, if you remove or compromise this doctrine, we are in effect destroying very foundation of biblical Christianity. And when the foundation breaks apart, then superstructure will inevitably collapse. So the reason why we believe in a supernatural creation, supernatural, it is foundation to our other doctrines of the Bible. It is really foundation of biblical Christianity. Okay, so our point number one is this, right? Creation, supernatural nature of God's creative activity. Supernatural nature of God's creative activities. That is what our point here. All right. So God created everything out of nothing, right? God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing. All right. And then what God did, God made all the rest of the things out of what he has created. That's the best way to put it. God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing. And then he made everything what you see, rearranged, made everything out of what he has created, or what he has created out of nothing, actually. Okay. Now, I think we will go to one more point and then I will close it. The sudden nature of creative activities. This is the biggest problem for the oldest creation, oldest earth views. They need thousands of years to have these things to be seen. So, but what we are saying, no, it is sudden. Creation was not only supernatural, but it also was instantaneous. What is instantaneous? Simply sudden. Look at this one. Psalm 33, verse 6 and 9 indicate that each of God's creative activities in the creation week were the immediate result from creative word. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, their starry host by the breath of his mouth. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm. There is no thought here of delay, actually. And it is just you don't read in the Bible that it took time for God to do it. Nor is there a thought of gradual build-up or trial and error process. That is not there. There is no thought of transition from non-existence to existence. There is no transition we see when God, by the word of the Lord, when God commanded, it came into existence, right? So when God said, Genesis 1-3, let there be light, there was light. And it happened immediately when God spoke. So the concept of instantaneous creation permeates Genesis 1. All right? So when God created, for example, living things, he chose to use previously created inorganic substance for the bodies of the creatures. Again, I am coming again to that point, right? All these living creatures were created, right? God chose to use previously created inorganic substances. Right? God used the substance of the earth to make them. All right, that's the reason these living creatures go back to the earth. Has to go back to the earth. Right? Thus, he commanded the waters to bring forth marine creatures and the birds on the fifth day. But the water of itself contributed nothing to the complex physical structure and life principle of these animals. Just as the water Jesus used at Cana of Galilee, right? Remember that story, John chapter 3? Just as the water Jesus used at the Cana of Galilee could have never have turned into wine, even if it vibrated with the evolutionary application, right? In those stone jars for millions of years, it will be water, right? It will be water. In both cases, right? In both cases, complex entities appeared suddenly, even though built upon pre-existing lifeless materials. So, the earth was commanded by God to bring forth the trees. God commanded the earth to bring forth trees. But this does not imply a gradual growth process any more than God's use of same earth to bring forth the full-grown body of a man at a later time in creation week. It is also, God, making a full-grown man. So that is something to note here. So God is commanding the earth to bring forth, right, vegetation. God is commanding the earth to bring animals. And same God is the one who commanded actually in making of man, right? It is the same God who, so the creation of man also was a miraculous thing. Don't think that it was a natural thing. It was never been natural, because a dust can never be human being. Dust can never be human being until God miraculously works. So, sudden nature of creation may also be drawn from the analogy with Jesus' miracles. The New Testament is abundantly clear that Jesus, the eternal Son of God, was the creator of the universe. Very clear, right? We have we have clear verses that Jesus was the creator of the universe. It was Jesus who created, actually. The New Testament also clearly demonstrates that the miracles Jesus did were to reveal his genuine identity and glory. God wants to reveal his identity. If these two assertions are true, then we can make some comparison between Jesus' original work in creation and what he did during his first advent. For example, in Matthew 8:23 to 27, a storm came upon the sea, all right, a huge storm. And the boat that Jesus and the disciples were in was in danger of sinking. In response to the disciples' fear, Jesus spoke to the storm, right, and the sea, with immediate result that the sea became calm, right? That is what we say, this was instantaneous. So imagine Lazarus being dead for 4 days. Take out all other examples of raising, right? Dead for 4 days. Jesus called Lazarus from the tomb alive. Sudden, right? Immediate. Even healing of sick. Immediately he did. All these miracles were immediate. Jesus did not have to proclaim a fast for 40 days to happen a miracle. Some people do. No. When Jesus did miracles, it was immediate. Because Jesus is the creator of the universe who commanded the things to come. Right? God commanded the earth to provide vegetation, commanded the earth to provide animals. It came fully matured. Fully matured. All right. So what we have to understand is that this creation was finished in 6 literal days, demonstrate that creation was sudden. All right, 2 principles we learned. Okay. So what number 1, 3 principles, okay, 2 principles. Number 1, supernatural nature of God's creative activities. Number 2, the sudden nature of God's creative activities. Sudden nature. All right. And now, third, we need to look at functional mature nature of God's creative activities in the next class. Any question now? So one of the things that I made, some statement that I made was, not everything that you see was created out of nothing.
Yes, Pastor. Genesis 1:20, God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures.
Yes.
So the waters are a means which were used to bring forth these creatures.
Right.
Whereas for the 24, it says, let the earth bring forth the living creatures.
Yeah, so that the living creatures includes all the animals and all the living creatures, right?
So are we to interpret that the earth was instrumental in creation? These things did not
Yes, yes,
come
through the
to light,
means.
instantaneously they did not come, but through the process of the earth they came up.
Yes, through the earth, yes. So that God's mission will be fulfilled. Like, that is the reason these things have to go back to the earth. All these things that come have to go back to the earth because it has come through the earth, the means of the earth. So that means a creation of animals were not out of nothing. It is like God is not asking, from somewhere like the Sai Baba creating ashes, that's not the way. God commanded the earth to bring forth the living creatures. So that's how it is made.
So we need to be very clear that creation of the universe and the, starry hosts and the earth was out of nothing, whereas everything else subsequent to it is out of something.
Out of something, absolutely. Absolutely. Out of something. And that is another thing, these matters and energy, the first law of thermodynamics in the science is something, we have to really understand. This will not go anywhere. The energy can change its form, but it has to be here.
Yes.
It has to be here. You may make energy out of water, may make energy out of, whatever, but if you connect everything, it has to be here. It doesn't go. It might move. It might change its form.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you.